Senator in the 62nd District, he's from Tonawanda, North Tonawanda, is Senator Rob Ortt. And Rob, somewhat like Assemblyman Marc Butler last year proposed in the Assembly, the fact that the state really has looked at New York Metro and Upstate differently. They've done it with minimum wage. Why couldn't the same thing be applied to other laws, such as the New York SAFE Act, where there is such a difference between downstate and upstate on the use of guns? Senator Rob Ortt, thanks so much for coming on. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the thoughts are that, and this may go somewhere in the Senate. The thoughts are that why not? If you can do it for minimum wage, why can't you do it for the SAFE Act?
Well, exactly. If you now, and not only minimum wage, but even currently, and so there's discussions on this going forward, but even ride-hailing services
Uber,
like Uber and Lyft,
yeah,
that's allowed in the city. And even the discussions we're having about bringing it to upstate, there would be even differences between how it's regulated and governed and how it operates in the city versus how it operates upstate. So I think there is, as you mentioned, there is a precedent of differences in laws and in legislation and regulations between the city and the rest of the state. And on this issue particularly, when you look at where the law is very popular, where it's regarded as good legislation, predominantly in the five boroughs. When you get out of the five boroughs, as you go across other parts of the state, it's much more controversial. And of course, gun ownership, as you mentioned, and the use of guns is far different and viewed far differently in the five boroughs versus, let's say, in Utica or in Western New York or in the North Country.
So this is interesting because you may be able to get somewhere in the Senate, but the Assembly. I know that Marc Butler first sprung this idea last year, and the thought was, boy, we might be able to get through the Senate. The Assembly is going to be a little tougher. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, look, certainly the Assembly is always going to be tougher if you're going to rate it versus the Senate. There's no question. You look at the sanctuary state legislation that was just passed in the Assembly. I mean, that I think shows you the difference between the Assembly and the Senate. And of course, the Assembly, out of the 105 Democratic majority, I think like 68 or 69 of those 105 members represent one of the five boroughs.
Yeah.
So so there's no question it'll be an uphill battle. But I think by carving out New York City, the hope was that this would be, I don't want to say it's a compromise, but a sort of political or pragmatic solution to say, look, you folks in the city, you like this, you think it's a good law, you can keep it. You don't have to. We're not asking you to repeal it, but we would like to repeal it, obviously, the rest of the state, and maybe the fact that we're still talking about this law and we're still talking about this very important issue, I think is a good sign, maybe for some type of agreement or compromise solution between the Assembly, the Senate, and of course the governor. And
isn't there already have been on the books for quite a while different laws when it comes to guns that were city laws preventing handguns and guns into the city of New York?
Absolutely. There's no question. The city of New York, prior to the SAFE Act, was a very difficult municipality to, if you wanted to own a pistol, if you wanted to own a handgun specifically, it was very difficult to go through that process and to get one. And so and I think that mentality of making it very difficult for law-abiding citizens to own firearms is really sort of what the SAFE Act was in part about.
Yeah.
And there's a host of other bills that would do that as well, that would just really make it, very difficult to own legally a gun, and thus reducing gun ownership. And I think that's a real issue. But there's no question New York State, before the SAFE Act, had some of the most strict gun laws of any state on the books.
Yeah.
And then you add the SAFE Act to that, and I think that's why you have a lot of the frustration and some of the unworkable aspects. The pistol permit registration, which we're seeing come up this year. If you talk to any of your county clerks, they will tell you this is a very difficult component to comply with. The State Sheriff's Association never endorsed the law. So there's a lot of sort of pragmatic issues, practical problems with this law beyond the larger issues of unconstitutionality, that kind of thing.
I have actually Assemblyman Marc Butler has called in here,
Good.
And Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Bill, and good morning, Senator. How are you guys doing?
Good morning, Assemblyman. How are you?
Good, thank you. Let me begin by saying I agree with every word the Senator said, and I think he's really nailed it. I just want one minor thought to be here. This will not, I don't want to unrealistically raise expectations. It would not be a full repeal, and simply for this reason, the SAFE Act is a very technical piece of legislation, and there are some crimes that would have a felony connected to them, and you can't have something be a felony in Buffalo, New York, but not in New York City or vice versa. So we could not fully unattach it. So I would call this a better, lighter version of the SAFE Act, and certainly our aim is to get rid of the most onerous sections of the law, and I'm so pleased the Senator has taken this into the Senate. The point is coming when we're going to have to gear up a campaign. We're going to have to ask our sportsmen, let's get it on the floor for a vote in the Assembly. Let's see where things lie, because we have some upstate Democrats that would have a difficult time voting against us, considering their constituencies. I believe if we can force it onto the floor, it will be an interesting vote, and you're right. I fully anticipate the Senate passing this. It really gives this bill a tremendous amount of credence with the Senate seriously considering it, and with an influential senator carrying it there.
And Griffel, by the way, is also a co-sponsor of.
I understand that.
Rob Ortt's bill.
Yes, Senator Griffel as a sponsor, as well as a co-sponsor, as well as Senator Jim Seward are both co-sponsors of this legislation.
Nice. So, Andrew, with a quick
question to both of you: what is the likelihood that this will even get past the governor's desk?
Okay, so say it passes the House and the Assembly and the Senate. Senator Ortt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think if it only passes as sort of two standalone bills, and that's the only thing that happens, that's certainly going to be difficult for the governor to sign, because this is one of his signature achievements from his perspective, and for his base. But I think if we can get this as part of an end of session agreement, where we sort of pass a package of different bills between the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor, then you sort of have a pre-agreed upon. If we can get it as part of that, then I think it stands a much better chance, obviously, of going into law.
All right. Assemblyman, you agree with that?
I believe the way we're approaching it, I mean, the governor, for his political purposes, and it's hard to look into his thought process, but certainly he can continue to claim that he brought the SAFE Act to New York, he got it passed, and he can still get the positive press if that's what it generates. Because, look, I think if you look at the statistics, I think the only numbers that the SAFE Act has generated is increased expenses for enforcing a law that really is nothing. I mean, it's ephemeral. It doesn't really accomplish things, except it tries to single out and identify who owns what weapons and who buys what ammunition, and on and on and on. And of course, you've got the issue of generational confiscation. Sure. If someone passes away, can they pass?
Right. How do you? What do you do? You pass those guns on, gentlemen. Assemblyman Butler, thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. And Senator Rob Ortt, we appreciate you taking the time from North Tonawanda, taking the time with us. We wish you the best of luck. A lot of people are rooting for you guys right now.
Well, I appreciate you guys covering it and having me on, and thanks very much. And hopefully we can talk about it in the future, about the bill actually passing.
All right. Love it. Okay. Senator Rob Ortt, thanks so much. And Assemblyman Marc Butler. Quick break.